Hi, welcome to this introduction to SQL Basics. In this video, we will be covering the basic querying, filtering options, aggregating data, joins, and set operations on a data set in SQL. We'll start with the basic querying. The select statement is the backbone of SQL, allowing us to retrieve data from a database. For example, to select all the columns, you would use the select. Select is a keyword. You would use select followed by the star symbol, which means all the columns. And then you use the keyword from, and then the table name. In our case, the table name is employees. In some cases, you may not want to select all the columns. In those cases, you would list the column names. As you can see in the example, it says select. And in SQL, there are a few things that are keywords and format has to stay the same. So some things to know is select and from will be in every SQL query and the table name. The things that might change would be the columns you select. So here is an example where you see select and then the first name, the last name, email, which are the columns to select from the table employees. It's very important to keep the syntax the same, meaning you have to have the word select, but casing doesn't matter. Uppercase or lowercase is fine, but you do need to write the word select as it's spelled and as it's written, and followed by the column names, followed by the from, and then the employees. This is a very simple query, and this is exactly how you start. This is the first step to doing SQL querying. Now let's talk about filtering options. The where clause helps us filter rows based on specific conditions. We can use operators like and, or, between, like, and things like that. Here's an example. If we want to select a list of employees earning more than 5,000 and who belong to the area code 515 and who joined before September 1st, 2004, this is how you would do it. In a SQL, you would say select, and as I mentioned, star here indicates all the columns. We are not specifying any columns. That means if the table has 15 columns, you will actually be retrieving 15 columns. In some cases, you may only be interested in 2 or 3 out of those 15. Then you would list the column names. So select star from, and the table name is employees. That has to be like whatever your table name is. And then it's followed by another keyword called where. Now here is where we start filtering. What were the conditions in our example? We said we want the phone number, area code to start with 515. What does that mean? It means that the column called phone number has, you can use the like is one of the filtering options. Like meaning it has the word in it and the numbers are 515. And the ampersand sign here, the percentage sign here means that the anything after that is kind of anything after that. We'll go more about regular expressions, but usually if you say like, it will match to whatever it is like. So all you're saying here is it should start with 515 and it can have any numbers after it, because people have different phone numbers, right? So but we are saying at least the area code should be 515 and we don't care what the next next 7 digits are. So, and then the next thing you condition is and operator is used to concatenate a bunch of filtering options together. So their phone number should be that, and their hire date has to be greater than September 2004, 1st of September, and the salary has to be greater than 5,000. This is basically like you just write these options like this. I mean, this is an example here, but pretty much if you know this, you're set. You could actually be an analyst if you know this and do a lot of the querying from most of the tables. And in addition to this, we'll continue next and talk a little about aggregating data. So what does aggregating data mean? So aggregating means you have a group by function, okay? So let's review what we have learned so far. We have learned that a SQL statement always has a select, and it always has a from after that, and it can have a where after that. The where was the one I showed here. And then after that, it can have the group by. So these are the orders you have to remember about the SQL statement. This does not change. It's kind of like the ABCs of SQL, right? I mean, you know that after A comes B and after B comes C. So it's the same concept here. After the word select, you will have a word from. and you'll have the word where, but where is optional. That's only if you want to do filtering. So some cases you may not see the where, but the select and from are like definitely you need them. You cannot have a query without those two words. So select, from, where, and the next thing to know is the group by. Now, what is group by? Group by helps us is a clause that aggregates data at a defined level. So say we want to have we want to count the number of employees in a department ID and the average salary. There are these functions, right? The commonly used functions like average, sum, min, max. These are aggregates, because when you use sum, what do you get when I say give me the sum of 5 plus 3, right? It's one number. You see, it's getting aggregated into like one number. In any of those cases and scenarios where you will have a bunch of rows and you'll be aggregating it. So like you have salary of 10 people, right? And you're like, how much is the total salary of those 10 people? That's an aggregation you're doing, right? That's when you need an aggregation, like how you're looking for one number, right? So in those cases, you would probably do like a sum, or maybe you're looking for average. Then there is a function inbuilt called AVG that stands for average. So these are again all keywords. These are functions that exist. There's a function called max, there's a function called min, and there's a function called count. Count is the most frequently used because it tells you like the number of people, like employee count. So what this query here is doing is it's counting the number of employees by department ID, and also giving the average salary by the department ID. So that's why in the group by, you have the group by department ID. So say there are 5 departments, there would be like 5 lines in this output, because you are saying for each department, tell me how many people and what's the average salary. So like you're looking for one number, right? In the department, there could be like 10 people, but you're looking for that number 10, right? So you're going to say like in department 500, you have count of people would be 10, and then you would have the average salary, like what is the average salary, 100,000 or whatever it is. Okay, the next most important thing is joins. In most SQL, you will also need to do joins. There are 3 kinds of joins. There's inner join, cross join, and outer join. Okay, and so these are also again just concepts. You just have to learn it. If you learn it once and do a little bit of hands-on learning, you would be able to get through this. So inner join, what does inner join mean? Inner join means joining 2 tables with the common column. For example, I have 2 tables, right? So I have an employee table and I have a salary table, right? In the salary table and the employee table, we have something called a field called employee ID. Those 2 fields match. So when those fields match, you can join the table. But when you join an inner join, in case there is, for example, there is an employee ID, employee number 123, right? And the employee has to exist in both tables. If it only exists in one table, the employee record will not get returned back, meaning you may not get data for that. So that's why inner join will make sure that whatever you have, like so when we talk about SQL, when you have 2 tables, we usually call them left side table and the right side table, because when you write a join, you always say from table A inner join table B. So A would be considered the left-hand side table and B would be considered the right-hand table. So in an inner join, the record has to exist in both table A and table B. Only then it will be merged and that record will be returned. If it exists in A, you may not get it back. If it existed in B but not in A, you may not get the record back at all. So that's the difference between inner join. Inner join means both have to match. And then let's talk about left join and right join. You can skip the cross join, we'll get back to it. It is basically like a Cartesian product of the sets of rows from the join table. We can go more into that detail, but just for now, if you're a beginner, just know the concept that there is something called cross join, and I'll show you and demonstrate it for a little bit more clarity on that. In terms of outer join, there are 3 kinds of outer joins. There's full, left, and right. So left is most commonly used. Joins are like left is most commonly used, I would say. Left join is basically, like I said, if you have a column A and B, A being your left table, you would want all the data from the left table, regardless of whether there is like a matching record found in table B. So say there's like 5 rows in table A, and there is 2 rows in table B. It doesn't matter. Your output will have 5 total rows, even if like the table B doesn't have record for them, you'll get like null, something called null values if it doesn't match. Here's an example. Let's look at this slowly. So list employees along with their department name. Um, so as you can see, what does the SQL start with? Select. What is it followed by? From. And then, as I mentioned to you, they could be aware, but it's optional. There could be a group by, that's optional. But before aware, if you are joining tables, you need to do this. You need to say from employees is the table A, inner join departments on the department ID. Now, what is the E after the employees here? You might ask, like, what is that letter E? E is for aliasing. What that means is like instead of spelling out employees all the time, I'm giving it kind of a short name called the table E, right? You can nickname them. So when you see like employees space E, that means going forward, or you can start referencing or this table as E, so people do that because usually table names are very long and you want to kind of alias them, so that it makes the code more readable, and but you alias it in something that is more appropriate, like beginning letter of the table, or like a combination of letters. If the table is like you know something, then you would just say like 2 or 3 letters. You don't want to go too long on the aliasing, because the whole idea of aliasing is to be able to quickly type the table reference without having to type the whole big long word. So anyways, and then here in this case, they say inner join departments D, right? So D is like the nickname or the aliasing for the departments table. And then you say on is again a keyword. So this is just the syntax, how you join a table, okay? If you want to join 2 tables, you say the table name, like employees, you say what kind of join, which is like inner join. It could be anything. It could be left join, inner join, right join. Inner join, remember I told you there has to be record in both for it to return the data back. So you're just joining 2 tables, and you have to say on what key. Like I said, you have to mention the column name. Sometimes the column names are usually same, but it's not necessary that it has to be department ID. Maybe in one table it's called department ID, and another table it's called dep ID. It's very rare. You usually want to keep the same syntaxes across tables. So when you build these tables, you try to be consistent so that it's easy for people. So oftentimes it's the same, but may not be the same sometimes. So just don't be surprised. Like you have to say the table name that actually is existing in the table. I mean the column name that is existing in the table. You cannot, if it's spelled a little different, you have to go with it. It has to match. So then you list all the employees with the department name if they belong to one. So then in that case, you want to do the left join, because in this case, the employee may not belong to a department, but you still want to have their record back. You want their first and last name. If they belong to a department, you give their department. So that's why you're using the left join. The left join is like, if the left, whatever I have in the left, I want all the records. Even if there is no match. If there is a match, great, get me the information and merge it for me and provide it to you. So that's what it means. Now let's learn about some set operators. There are set operators called union, union all, minus, and intersect. So what does union do? Union returns unique rows after merging the 2 result sets. Union all will return all the rows from. So when do you use set operators? Actually, you use set operators when you want to concatenate 2 SQL queries. What do I mean by 2 SQL queries? I mean like different, 2 completely different. You might have one SQL like select star from employees, right? And maybe somebody else has a table called select star from let's say Walmart employees, and let's say another table is called Home Depot employees, right? But you want to merge both of these employee lists together for some reason, then you would union them, because in this case you're just trying to concatenate the list, right? You have a list of 5 people and you have another list of 10 people. You want a sum of those 15 people, then you use union all. This is not where you can use join. There's nothing to join. You're you're joining, but like you're not joining them on something. It's not like the worker exists in the as an a Walmart employee and he'll be a Home Depot employee, right? He could be in the Walmart list, he or she would be in the Walmart list, and then he or she would be in the Home Depot list. So if we want both those lists merged and we want all the 15 employees, then you need to use a union. But again, in what there's two, as you can see, there's union and union all. So the thing with union is, in case somebody existed in list A and B, it'll only return it once. Union all will keep the all of them. Like even if they're repeating and there's duplicates, it'll keep the duplicates from list A and list B, or from the SQL query from A and SQL query from the second SQL query. Minus, it returns all the rows in the first result set that are not in the second result set. So like you have two lists, like people who have enrolled, and you have people who, all the people you might have like a students table, and you might have a table of people who have enrolled. Then you want to find out who are the students who have not yet enrolled, right? Then you could do like all the students, and if you minus out those enrolled, that'll give you the not enrolled people, right? So that's where you use the minus operator. And then there's another called intersect. Common rows from both intersect, as you may know, and you may be familiar in algebra and math or something. Intersect means it should exist in both. So those are the different set operators. There's union and union all. And oftentimes when you're interviewing or something, you'll always come across like people asking you, what's the difference between union and union all? So it's very important. Union is, it will give you duplicates. Like even if that one and then a person exists in one, and then also again, it'll repeat it. Unique, actually union makes it unique, and union all will repeat it. So those are the two differences, and you're very important to know that. Now we can do a hands-on experiment. Please click on the link in the video, and I will show you how to do an example of this using BigQuery.